Shri Sai Ram. Dear students, hearty welcome to one and all for the 10th class state syllabus, Science textbook 2 and the chapter How do organisms reproduce? And today the continuity of this chapter's part 3, which mainly deals with human reproductive system, that is reproduction in human beings. Before we start the part 3, let us recap our previous part key points and also check out and get clear about the answers for the home assignment too. Dear students, in our previous class of the same chapter, that is how do organisms reproduce, under part 2 we discussed the reproduction, mainly the sexual reproduction in flower. We discussed in our previous class about the sexual reproduction in flowering plants, and those flowering plants are biologically termed as angiosperms, and in angiosperms the flower is the reproductive part, and this flower mainly has 4 important parts which we call them as whorls. Among them the 2 non-essential whorls, the calyx and the corolla, and the other 2 essential whorls, the stamen and the pistil. Further, we continued that the sexual reproduction in flowering plants by 2 processes. One is the pollination and the other is the fertilization. At the end of fertilization, that is the end of sexual reproduction in flower, we see various changes. The result of this fertilization leads to the ovary develops into fruit and the ovule develops into seed. Some more changes also we observe. The sepals, the petals, the stamen and the pistil also fall off. I hope all of you are ready with your answers for the assignment 2. Now let us check and get clear. The first main, fill in the blanks. The reproductive part in angiosperms is flower. Very happy. Sathya has smiling face in him that he has written correct answer. Good. The second one, dash develops into fruit after fertilization. Answer is ovary. Congrats Mr. Santosh, you have also written correctly. The third question, fusion of male and female gametes is termed as fertilization. Hats off to Vinyas for his perfect answer. The fourth one, dash flower may have either male or female reproductive parts, that is unisexual flower. Almost most of you all have written correct answers for this fill up the blanks, which shows your sincerity and commitment and also alertness in listening. The second main, answer the following. Define the terms cross-pollination, syngamy and triple fusion. Cross-pollination, the transfer of pollen grains from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower of another plant is called as cross-pollination. The syngamy, the fusion of one male gamete with the egg to form a zygote which is diploid. It is called as syngamy. The third one, triple fusion. One more male gamete fuses with two polar nuclei to form a triploid primary endosperm nucleus, and this is called as triple fusion. It is also termed as, very correct Mr. Naman, you have raised your hand telling that it is double fertilization. Perfect. The triple fusion is also being termed as double fertilization. The second question, how does the process of fertilization take place in flowers? A very important question from exam point of view, where you have to first write the definition. Fertilization is the process of fusion of male and female gametes to form the zygote. The pollen grains that are deposited on the stigma consume the water and get swollen up and forms the pollen tube. In the pollen tube, the two non-motile male gametes are being formed, which will enter the ovule through the micropyle and then reach the embryo sac. Among them, one male gamete fuses with the egg to form a diploid zygote. The other male gamete fuses with two polar nuclei and it forms the triploid endosperm nucleus, which is called as the process double fertilization. To fetch very perfect marks, complete marks, the best method is underlining the important terminologies in this answer. So, fertilization, the process of fusion of male and female gametes. The pollen grains swell due to absorption of water and they produce pollen tubes. The two non-motile male gametes that are formed in the pollen tube will enter the ovule through the micropyle. One male gamete fuses to form the diploid zygote. The other male gamete fuses with two polar nuclei to form triploid endosperm nucleus. This is the process of fertilization which take place in flowers. What are the changes that is observed in angiosperms after fertilization? So, after fertilization, the zygote develops into an embryo, the ovary develops into fruit, the ovule develops into seed, and the sepals, petals, stamens, the carpel or the pistil are going to fall off. Very happy that all of you have written correct answers for these questions. If not, few mistakes, try to correct yourselves. And to fetch good marks, write the answers in point wise. For 2 marks, 4 points. Half mark for each point. As we all know, science diagrams play a major role to get good marks, and practicing the diagrams is a must with labeling the parts. Here you have the important diagrams that were being asked in the question number 4. Sketch the following and label the parts. First one, a typical flower, where a typical flower symbolizes the bisexual flower with all the 4 whorls. So you can observe the flower diagram which we had already practiced in our earlier class, just labeling the parts. If you want to label the parts, you can see sepal, all label the parts all in capital letters. Sepal, where the collection of sepals is called, very perfect answer Mr. Sarthak, you are telling it is calyx, correct. And this is the colorful one, that is petal. Petal, and the collection of petals, very good Mr. Manoj, it is corolla. Then you have the anther with its anther lobes, and then you have an elongated filament. Which together forms the male reproductive part, which is called as stamen. It is stamen. For your kind information, I think, hope you can observe very neatly. Stamen. Next you have the sticky part, which is called as the stigma. And you have an elongated style. Then you have a bulged part called as ovary. Inside this you will be having the ovule. Totally all these four together is called the female reproductive part, and that is pistil. It's called as the pistil. I hope you will have drawn the colorful bloomed flowers and have labeled the parts. The next one, reproductive parts of a flower. Just for your kind information, I will draw here. The reproductive parts of a flower is nothing but the stamen and the pistil. See the stamen, so simple way of drawing a stamen here, where it is having an elongated filament and anther lobes. Anther with anther lobes. Inside these anther lobes, you can see the pollen grains that are being deposited. This is stamen. This is nothing but it is male reproductive part. In flower. The collection of these stamens is called as, very perfect Mr. Suhas, perfect answer, collection of the stamens is called as andrecium. Then we have the female reproductive part, and that is nothing but the gynoecium, or we also call it as the pistil or the carpel. Stigma, the elongated style, the bulged ovary, and here you have the ovule, and this is called as the pistil, or it is also called carpel, which is the female reproductive part in flower. Very important diagrams from the exam point of view. They may ask, draw a neat diagram of pistil and label the three important parts. You need not draw the complete flower. You can draw only the pistil diagram, which is having a sticky stigma, an elongated style and a bulged ovary with ovules inside. If they ask, draw the stamen, which is the male reproductive part in flower, simple diagram with a filament, anther which is having anther lobes and inside the pollen grains. So this is about the reproductive parts of a flower. Then you are having the germination of pollen on stigma, which we can observe here, complete diagram, where you can see the pollen grains are there, the filament, the anther, which we already drew in a simple way for better understanding. And this is a pictorial view for all of you. And here you can observe the germination of pollen on stigma also, where you can see the ovule, the pollen tube, where the two nuclei reaching to the ovule, one combines to form the zygote and the other forms the endosperm nucleus also. Dear students, and very happy to see that all of you have returned the homework questions and answers perfectly, and few errors of you who have corrected yourselves. Now, let us move on to the part 3 of the same chapter, How do organisms reproduce, which mainly deals with the reproduction in human beings. If I think of this, human beings, I remember the great personalities who realized themselves for what purpose they have taken the human birth, have quoted like this in Kannada. Manava janma balu doddadayya, halu madiಕೊಳ್ಳಬೇಡಿರಾ ಹುಚ್ಚಪ್ಪಗಳಿರಾ, it says. The human birth is most precious. Never waste this life, this birth which you have got, this human form, because it is the ultimate form which makes you to merge in God, to become God, to realize your own divinity. All other animals, including human beings, have their own tendencies which is inborn to the nature changes. Ahara nidra bhayamaituna, to tell you all. That means for food, for sleep and fear and procreation. These are common to all the creatures. But human beings should realize ultimate other than all these four is realizing your own self. Kana pina sona marna sabhi karta hai. मगर ए मानव शरीर क्यों दिया है? क्योंकि हम हमारा सच्चा स्वरूप को समझाना चाहिए. We have to realize our own self. So this human form, as we know, procreation, the reproduction is a part and parcel of the human being. It is a natural tendency. There is nothing to feel hesitation or inferiority. But ultimately, the ultimate thing of human being is to realize his own self. Because his all life processes, the systems, the organ systems that are being in the human being is the supermost complexity, and this is been created by the God. Hats off to the God. If we come back to this reproduction in human beings, where we come to know such a pious and such a complicated organ systems that are found in the human being, should finally realize that he is born not to be born again. A question was asked to one of the student or a disciple by Bhagavan Sri Sathya Sai Baba. He asked a question, why are you born? And there was multiple answers from the students. One boy was telling, I am born to serve the nation. Another person, I am born to serve you, Swami. But finally, Bhagavan Sathya Sai Baba, a social and a spiritual master, quotes the answer, you are born not to be born again. We are born not to be born again. Because Atma, the self, the consciousness, has neither birth nor death, to tell you on. This body will perish, but the soul will not perish. These are the things which we should realize when we come across the reproduction in human beings. Because the human beings' reproduction, first we should know that human beings are unisexual. Sexes are separate. Male differs from female in physical appearance, in their life activities also. So they are unisexual. Human beings are unisexual, and the human reproduction is highly evolved. The human reproduction is highly evolved. The reproductive systems of males and the females consist of many organs which are distinguishable into primary and secondary sex organs. Unisexual with distinguishable primary and secondary sexual characters are there, sexual organs are there in the human reproductive system. Primary sex organs. If the sex is male, then the organ is testis. It is singular. Testes is plural. Testis is singular. And the gametes produced by the testis is sperms. The hormone which initiates is testosterone. Female sex, the gonad is the ovary, the gamete is the ova, and the hormones are estrogen and progesterone. The secondary sex organs, which mainly include the genital ducts and the glands, which help in transportation of gametes and the reproductive process. So these primary sex organs, which are being by birth, they are being included, but they become active, they undergo the function only when the secondary sex organs starts to function. The primary and secondary sexual characters. The primary sexual characters, they are present at birth. The secondary sexual characters develop at puberty. Then what is primary sexual characters? If you observe the picture, a baby born, From the time the birth of the baby, the primary sexual characters are being observed. Immediately if I see this born baby, we remember VIP word. What it means, VIP? Many we are already quoting from there. Vinyas is telling very important person. Sure, it is also correct. But when we relate it to this just now born baby, very innocent person. Innocency is liked by God. It is innocency which makes us to reach God. The secondary sexual characters which develop at puberty. The same born baby, as the growth takes place internally, externally, various changes take place, and those are nothing but secondary sexual characters which are being developed at puberty. I remember Adi Shankaracharya's Bhajagovindam, one stanza, if we think of this birth and death cycle. This body has birth and death cycle. We should come over from this birth and death cycle. That's why it is quoted in Bhajagovindam by Adi Shankaracharya. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jetare shayanam, iha samsare bahudustare, kripaya pare pahi murare. Oh Lord, this body takes birth in the wombs, in the various number of wombs, having various parents in various janmas. Again it is going to perish, this birth, this body starts to perish. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jetare shayanam. Iha samsare bahudustare. This samsara has no end. Samsara, the word itself. Kripaya pare pahi murare. O Murari, O Lord Krishna, come to rescue by taking me from this ocean of samsara, says Adi Shankara in his Bhajagovindam. And again we see the born baby becomes a child, then finally boy or a girl, then a man or a woman, to tell you all, where their thoughts, their actions, their sort of behaviors also changes. Balastavat krida saktah, tarudastavat taruni saktah, vruddhastavat chinta saktah, parame brahma kopina saktah. Again in the Bhajagovindam, Adi Shankara quotes here. In the childhood you like to be playing. In the youth you start to get attracted to opposite sex. In the old age you start to ponder, worry. Finally you tell there is no time to think of God. That should not happen. That too in our country like India, where Nachiketa, Prahallada, Dhruva, who are being at the age of tender age of childhood, by chanting the name of the Lord, have been great examples for self-realization. See, these are the things which we should remember, that the primary sexual characters which are present at birth, why? Just to realize God. The secondary sexual characters, just to think of God and come to know that this is ever-changing process. The never-changing and the everlasting is the Supreme God, which we should remember, dear students. So, from the birth, the primary, secondary characters, and the puberty stage, the secondary sexual characters develop. What then means, or what you mean by this puberty? Puberty is the age of human males and females at which the reproductive organs become functional. As we know, by birth the reproductive organs have grown, but they become functional, they become active only at the stage of puberty. Gonads start producing the gametes and the sex hormones, and the boy and the girl become sexually mature. So puberty means the maturity of the boy or the girl is the puberty. Then what is the age? 13 to 14 years in males, the puberty is being reached. 10 to 12 years in females, the puberty is being reached. Secondary sexual characters in human males. So as the puberty reaches, what are the changes which we can observe in human males? And those secondary sexual characters in human males, if you observe the pictorial diagram, you will come to know. And it is nature's law. There is nothing to feel like hesitation, or there is nothing to feel like inferiority complex. Testosterone in males bring about the following secondary sexual characters in human males. Very important hormone. It is the testosterone which brings about the secondary sexual characters. The first one, enlargement of penis and the scrotum. The penis that is being enlarged, and the scrotum, that is the skin which encloses the testes, to tell you all. So the enlargement of the penis and the scrotum is one of the secondary sexual characters which is developed due to testosterone hormone. Broadening of shoulders and increased muscle development in males. Enlargement of larynx. You can observe the growth of larynx and deeper of the voice, to tell you all. Development of muscle mass. These are all the secondary sexual characters in males. Thickening of vocal cords, producing deepening of voice, that is voice breakage, what we can observe. Growth of pubic hair and extra hair on the face, in armpits and on the chest. Beard and moustache appearance, increase in height are the secondary sexual characters in males due to testosterone hormone. The secondary sexual characters in human females, if you observe the picture, you can see major secondary sexual characters in human females. The breast development, the wider hips and fat depositions, body hair, and the genital development. Mainly the estrogen in females brings about the secondary sexual characters where a girl child changes to a woman. Growth of breast and external genitalia. The growth of pubic hair and extra hair in armpits. Broadening of pelvis. Initiation of menstruation and ovulation. We come across the menstruation and ovulation in the further slides, where I will explain it to the extent possible. The fifth point, increase in subcutaneous fat in thighs, shoulders, buttocks and the face. Development of uterus, which mainly the girl is ready for pregnancy. Male reproductive system. The primary sexual characters, secondary sexual characters. At the end of the secondary sexual characters, the male and the female is ready to undergo the reproduction, where reproduction is a process to increase its members which look alike. So the male reproductive system which has been developed, if you observe the picture, exam point of view, the diagram is very important for 3 to 4 marks. So the male reproductive system has the testis, in the plural testes we call, laying outside the abdominal cavity, produce sperms and also produce the hormone called testosterone. If you observe, for your kind information, testicle, what it is mentioned, this is called as testis. Then you have the testes are being enclosed with a skin covering called as scrotum, and then you are having a tube, an elongated tube called as vas deferens, through which the sperms are being carried. Then you have the glands called as seminal vesicle and prostate gland, this which is going to make the sperms that are produced movable by producing fluids, and also provide nourishment, easy to ejaculate the sperms into the females. So this is the role of the seminal vesicles and prostate glands. Then these are being carried and finally into the urinary bladder, where from the urinary bladder through urethra, even the urine and the sperms have a common ejection point, that is the urethra. It is the urethra which is a common point to get rid of urine as well as to release sperms. In males, this is one difference, but in females we have two separate parts, for urine separate and for the ova or the egg it is also separate, which we will discuss further. Here you should remember the male reproductive system in human beings has testis, a pair of testes, singular testis, which is covered with scrotum. Then it has a tube called as vas deferens which carries the sperms, and the sperms are nourished and are being liquefied with the help of seminal vesicles and prostate glands. Then they are carried through the urinary bladder, stored, and then they are carried through the urethra and ejaculated out through the penis. And the penis is a muscular organ. The testes which we have seen, now the scrotum, where I already mentioned it for you all, it is a pouch of skin which hangs between the legs in human males, where the testes are covered with the scrotum and act as thermoregulator temperature maintenance and provides an optimal temperature for the formation of sperms. Vas deferens, which I already mentioned it in the diagram view, it's a straight tube which carries the sperms to seminal vesicles. Then we have the urethra, a long tube which carries urine from the bladder as well as sperms from the vas deferens through penis. So sperms from vas deferens and urine from urinary bladder are both carried by the same part, and that is the urethra. The penis, which I already mentioned, it's a thick muscular organ where sperms are ejaculated. Flow chart showing the path of sperm and role of different glands in human male reproductive system. A beautiful flow chart for our better understanding, which I already mentioned it for you all. If you remember 7-Up, you can remember how the sperms are produced and how they are being ejaculated or removed. Seminiferous tubules, epididymis, vas deferens, ejaculatory duct, and nothing, urethra, finally through the penis. In a more simple way, if you are finding difficulty here in the answering, some more in a simple way to mention for you all. Testes, which produce the sperms, and these sperms are carried by vas deferens and then to the seminal vesicles, and from the seminal vesicles, for your kind information, to the vas deferens to the seminal vesicles, again from the vas deferens to the urethra, and then it is ejaculated through penis. This is the sperm production to its ejaculation. The sperms that are produced in the testes carried through the vas deferens and are being nourished and are being made liquefied, which converts into semen with the help of seminal vesicles and also the prostate gland. Then it is being carried through the urethra and finally through penis it is being ejaculated. And this is somewhat, if you find an clue, that is 7-Up for the sperm production. Role of different glands in human male reproductive system. So when you remember even this diagrammatic view, this diagrammatic view of human male reproductive system also simplifies for your better understanding. The testes, which are being covered with the scrotum, are produce sperms and carried through the vas deferens. So you can observe here, this is the vas deferens. Then it is being carried through prostate gland as well as the seminal vesicles. See here, you can observe here. And then they are being nourished and liquefied, and then they are carried through the urethra and then through penis they are ejaculated. The role of the glands, mainly the seminal vesicle and the prostate gland nourishes the sperms, make the sperms to become mobile, easy to get ejaculated, liquefied, converts it into semen also. This is about the role of different glands in human male reproductive system. Even you can draw this diagram also for the male reproductive system. Female reproductive system in human beings has ovaries, a pair of ovaries which are almond size. So, two almond shaped ovaries that are located in the lower part of abdominal cavity near the kidney. So, you can observe here ovary which are of almond shaped. At the lower part of abdominal cavity near the kidney, which produce egg and also secrete two hormones, that is estrogen and progesterone. Fallopian tubes or oviducts, a long muscular tube with funnel shaped opening end near the posterior ends of each ovary. So, you can observe here the fallopian tubes. So, these are a funnel shape. If I want to draw a picture here, you can see the ovary and it is having a funnel shape which are long tubes end near the posterior ends of each ovary. If you observe the parts, then you have the uterus, which is mainly secondary sexual development, that is the uterus, where the girl is ready for pregnancy. Cervix, then the vagina. These are the main parts of human female reproductive system. As we mentioned, the fallopian tube, which are funnel shaped, starts from the anterior end of the ovary and ends at the posterior end, mainly helps in carrying the eggs from ovary to uterus. They also provides appropriate environment for its fertilization. The third is the uterus, large, inverted, pear-shaped muscular structure behind the bladder. On fertilization, the embryo gets attached to the wall of uterus and grows until birth. The embryo which gets attached to the wall of the uterus becomes the fetus and it grows till the birth takes place. The next is the vagina, which is the birth canal, which we observed in the previous slide diagram. A muscular tube contain elastic wall, receive the male's penis during copulation. So it is the vagina which is going to receive the sperms when the penis of the male is being inserted into it. and there the penis is going to ejaculate the sperms, and these sperms are being received by this vagina. Menstruation, dear students, are ancient scriptures which is been the permanent truths even now. Says that Yatra naryantu pujyante tatra ramante devataha. Where the women are being worshipped, there resides the gods and the goddesses. Hence we also quote Matru Devo Bhava, Pitru Devo Bhava, Acharya Devo Bhava, Atiti Devo Bhava. Finally, Vidyarthi Devo Bhava. Among all these Devo Bhava, the first is the Matru Devo Bhava. Mother is God, because mother takes birth twice. Once when she is being born as a child, the other when she gives birth to another child. When can she give birth to another child? Only when she reaches the stage of menstruation. What is this menstruation? You might be knowing girls monthly 3 to 5 days are being kept aside even now in some of the places where the traditional systems are being followed in the families. What we call Doddavradru. They are being kept separate. We call that process. The girl is now ready to undergo the pregnancy stage where she has reached the puberty. She has become the woman. How we come to know? It is this menstruation. What is this menstruation? If you think of the generated part of uterus along with the blood moves out of the vagina in the form of bleeding called menstruation. The puberty of girls is being identified when the eggs in the girls are produced more in number, but if they are being not fertilized, if they are unfertilized, then they are removed from the body along with some amount of blood, which we call it as bleeding. It is that stage which we call the menstruation. Menstrual cycle, the cycle of events taking place in female reproductive organs, is called menstrual cycle. Menstrual cycle, the cycle of events taking place in female reproductive organs. Difference between menarche and menopause, a very important question from the exam point of view. So menarche, a stage of initiation of menstruation. The menstruation starting stage is menarche. Menopause, a stage at which menstruation stops. So the stopping of menstruation is menopause, the starting of menstruation is menarche. It occurs at the age of 11 to 13 years in girls. It occurs at the age between 45 to 50 years in women. Beginning of reproductive phase in girls is menarche. End of reproductive phase in women, it is menopause. Fertilization in human beings. internal fertilization is essential part of reproduction in human beings. The internal reproduction is an essential part of reproduction in human beings. The fusion of sperm's nucleus with the egg nucleus to form a diploid zygote is called fertilization, which we have already understood. The fusion of male and female gametes resulting in zygote formation is called fertilization. The fertilization occurs only when copulation occurs during ovulation period. So, the period of ovulation, that is the menstruation period, if the copulation occurs, the union of male and female gamete, which we call the copulation also, then the fertilization takes place for the zygote to form. It is marked by stoppage of menstrual flow. So the menstruation stops when the fertilization has taken place in women. Thus, stoppage of menstruation is the earliest sign of pregnancy. So the sign of pregnancy is stoppage of menstruation. Dear students, the fertilization process in human beings, conception, what it means, fusion of male and female gametes to form the zygote, it is called as conception. So the conception and the zygote is formed. That zygote that is being obtained due to conception undergoes continuous cleavage divisions. So this multicellular, so the human being's fertilization process, which starts from the zygote formation, and the zygote is being formed by conception process, that is fusion of male and female gametes. That zygote develops into a multicellular young embryo, which we call it as blastocyst. It's a multicellular, many-celled, a multicellular embryo which is young, a multicellular young embryo, blastocyst. The blastocyst, which mainly gets attached to the uterus wall, and that forms the fetus, to tell you all. Before that, so conception leads to blastocyst, then the blastocyst, the implantation. Then what this implantation symbolizes, to tell you all? It is nothing but the embryo, the young embryo, 7 days after forms the implantation. Then the implantation further within 7 days gets attached to the wall of the uterus, the uterine wall. The implantation is nothing but the same embryo. After 7 days gets attached to the uterus wall, attached to the uterus wall, and that forms the fetus, and the fetus further starts to develop organs. The first organ it starts to develop is the spinal cord and the nerve tubes, to tell you all. So these organs when starts to develop are to be nourished and fed with oxygen food also. So the food is being provided, the nourishment is being provided, oxygen is being provided to the fetus in the uterus of the females by the placenta. So placenta is going to provide the nourishment to the fetus that is there in the uterus of the women. Further, the development of all the organs, a duration of 280 days, which we call it as gestation, 280 days. A period of 280 days gestation. After this 280 days, a newborn child, that is parturition, a new child is being born. Till then it is been these stages, the fertilization process in the womb of the mother. Conception, blastocyst, implantation, fetus formation, and the fetus is being provided nourishment with the help of placenta and all the organs development, a duration of 280 days, finally new child is being born. This period is called gestation period. So the gestation period, the period of 280 days from the zygote formation to the child born is called as gestation period. That is post-fertilization changes. So the post-fertilization changes, the conception, blastocyst, implantation, fetus, placenta and parturition. The conception is the zygote formation by the fusion of male and female gametes. Finally, that zygote undergoes multiple divisions, forms the multicellular young embryo, which is called as blastocyst. The blastocyst is nothing but the embryo. The implantation of this embryo after 7 days gets attached to the uterine wall and it forms the fetus. The fetus starts to develop the organs, and the first organs that develops is the spinal cord and the nerve tube, and these are being nourished with nutrients, oxygen and other required materials for the development of organs and healthy growth of the child with the help of placenta. And the placenta nourishes till all the organs are well developed, and a period of 280 days, that is the gestation period, finally the new child is being born. So this period from conception to the birth of the child is called gestation period, which is of 280 days. This is about the post-fertilization changes. Dear students, hope today's part 3 of reproduction in human beings under the chapter How do organisms reproduce, to the 10th level we have understood the human male reproductive system, the human female reproductive system, the primary and the secondary sexual characters and the role of the testosterone in males and estrogen and progesterone in females for the better retention, Here you have the home assignment 3. What are the functions performed by the testes and ovaries in human beings? Second question, what is the role of seminal vesicles and the prostate gland? Third question, what are the changes seen in girls at the time of puberty? Fourth question, why does menstruation occur? Fifth question, how does the embryo get nourishment inside the mother's body? Sixth question, draw the following and label all parts: human male reproductive system and human female reproductive system. I hope all of you have understood the today's part, and we will continue with the same chapter and also the next part, which will be the last part in our next class. Till then, hope all of you will be ready with the recapitulation of this chapter and revising, and also for better retention completing the home assignment 3 questions also. Till then, have a good time, offering all our content at the lotus feet of the Almighty and praying for the world's peace and happiness. Samasta Loka Sukhino Bhavantu. Thanking you one and all, and we shall meet once again in our next class. Jai Sai Ram.